At 11:10 p.m., my husband slapped me in our dining room because dinner was not on the table. His mother sat on my sofa with her shoes pressed into my rug, his sister held one of the credit cards I paid for, and Darren pointed toward the kitchen like I was hired help in my own house. "A woman who owns nothing should at least know how to cook," he said. So I walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer beneath the sink, and took out the county title record, the divorce petition, the bank transfer ledger, and the living room camera file my attorney had been waiting for. 20 minutes later, I carried them back under a silver dinner lid. Darren thought I had finally learned my place. What he had really done was walk straight into the home equity loan fraud file waiting for him at the credit union the next morning. My name is Wendy Sutter. I was 51 years old that night, though I remember feeling much older when my cheeks started burning and the room went quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, not the kind that comes after a long day when a house finally lets you breathe. This was the kind of quiet where everyone waits to see whether a woman will swallow one more humiliation because swallowing has become her assigned role. The grandfather clock in the hallway had just struck 11:10. I had heard the last chime while I was still standing beside the front door with my laptop bag dragging at one shoulder, my winter coat half unbuttoned, and my left foot still in the doorway. I had worked 13 hours that day because the regional payroll company where I was a senior compliance analyst had 3 client audits closing before Friday. My eyes ached from staring at spreadsheets. My back hurt from leaning over reports. My feet were swollen in shoes I had put on before sunrise. All I wanted was to take a shower, heat up whatever leftovers were in the refrigerator, and sleep with the house finally quiet. Instead, every lamp in the living room was on, the dining table was set for 3 people who had not cooked, and the 3 people who had been living from my paychecks looked at me as if I had committed a crime by coming home tired. Darren stood first. My husband had always been good at standing as if he owned the floor beneath him. He was 6 feet tall, broad in the shoulders, still handsome in the way people noticed at grocery stores, backyard barbecues, and church fundraisers, and he had learned a long time ago that if he spoke before anyone else, most people assumed he had authority. He had not held a steady job in 9 months. To neighbors, he called himself a business development consultant. To his mother, he said he was temporarily between opportunities because the market was unfair to men with vision. To me, when the bills came due, he called himself stressed, misunderstood, and unsupported. His mother, Marlene Sutter, sat on my sofa with a folded blanket over her lap, the same blanket I had bought during a January sale because she complained my house was always too cold. Nola, Darren's younger sister, sat in the armchair near the window with her phone in one hand and a glossy shopping bag tucked beside her purse. I noticed the bag first because the ribbon on it was the deep cream color of the boutique at the mall where Nola liked to buy things she never paid for herself. My credit card, the one I had added her to years earlier for emergencies, was probably still warm inside her wallet. "Where is dinner?" Darren asked. Not hello, not you're late, not are you all right, where is dinner? I looked from him to the dining table, 3 plates, 3 forks, 3 water glasses, not one pot on the stove, not one grocery bag on the counter, not one sign that anyone in that house had lifted a finger except to set a place for themselves and wait for the woman who paid the mortgage to come home and serve them. "I texted you at 5, I said. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to, and that bothered me almost as much as his face did. "I told you I was closing the Henderson audit tonight. There's soup in the freezer, there are eggs, there's bread you could have eaten." Marlene made a soft noise, the kind of sound she used when she wanted to seem wounded before she attacked. "Eggs," she said, as if I had suggested feeding them gravel. "My son is supposed to eat eggs at 11 o'clock at night because his wife cannot manage a household." Nola looked up from her phone. "I mean, you make such a big deal about having a career woman should at least be able to plan ahead." Then she smiled, not warmly, "or pick up takeout with all that overtime money." I should have turned around then. I should have taken my laptop bag, walked back out to the driveway, called my attorney from the car, and let tomorrow handle tonight. But people always imagine leaving as one clean motion. They do not understand how many years can wrap around your ankles. They do not understand how often you train yourself to stay calm because one more argument might make the house worse. I set my bag down slowly on the chair by the door. "I am not cooking at 11:10 at night," I said. "You are all adults." Darren crossed the room in 3 steps. He had done that before, crossed space fast enough to make me step back, but he had never hit me, not until that night. His hand came up so quickly that I saw Marlene's eyes widen before I felt anything. Then the slap landed across the left side of my face with a flat sound that seemed to crack the air. My head turned, my coat collar scraped my neck. For a second I did not breathe. I remember the smallest details from that second. The smell of Darren's aftershave, the blue glow from Nola's phone, one of Marlene's slippers half off her heel, the red light on the tiny living room camera I had installed 6 days earlier high on the bookshelf beside a ceramic vase. Darren leaned close. "Get in there and cook," he said, "you useless woman." Something inside me did not explode. That surprised me later. I always thought if the day came when he crossed that line, I would scream or hit back or fall apart. I did none of those things. Instead, I felt a cold, straight line run through me from my throat to my stomach. It steadied me. It made the room clear. It made his face look almost far away. I touched my cheek with 2 fingers, not because I needed to check whether it hurt, but because I wanted the camera to see it. Then I looked directly at Darren, at his mother, at his sister, and said, "All right, I will prepare exactly what this family deserves tonight." Darren smirked because he thought I had broken. Marlene leaned back against the sofa with satisfaction. Nola rolled her eyes and went back to her phone. I walked into the kitchen. I did not rush. I did not slam the door. I crossed the tile floor, closed the kitchen door softly behind me, and stood with my hands on the counter until my breathing slowed. My cheek pulsed. My ears rang. But beneath the pain there was another feeling, almost frightening in its calmness, relief, not because he had hit me. Because the question was over. For months I had wondered whether I was being too dramatic, whether I was building a file against my own husband because I was tired, resentful, bitter, ungenerous. Whether Ms. Rhodes, my attorney, was right when she said, "Wendy, financial control rarely arrives alone." Whether the camera was too much, whether saving text messages was too much, whether ordering the county title record and printing 4 years of transfers was too much. At 11:10 p.m., Darren answered every doubt with the palm of his hand. "Before I tell you what I put under that silver dinner lid, you need to understand the house. Not emotionally, legally. Because Darren had spent years calling it our house in public and his house when he was angry, but the county records had never once agreed with him. I bought the ranch house on Red Cedar Lane when I was 39 years old, 5 years before I married Darren. Back then, I was still Wendy Hollies. I had rented apartments for most of my adult life, saved every bonus check, eaten desk lunches, driven the same used Honda until the driver's seat foam showed through the fabric, and put 20% down on a 3-bedroom brick ranch with a maple tree in the front yard and a kitchen that caught morning light. My father helped me build extra pantry shelves the first month I owned it. He was the one who cut a false panel beneath the sink because he believed important papers should be kept somewhere boring. Burglars look in bedrooms and offices, he told me. Nobody wants to dig behind dish soap. He died 4 years before I met Darren, but that little hidden space remained, as did the lesson behind it. Anything worth protecting deserved a quiet place. When Darren first moved in after our wedding, he knew the house was mine. He even joked about it. "I married up," he said when we carried his boxes through the garage. At first, I thought that meant he respected what I had built. Later, I understood it meant he had identified something he wanted to stand inside until people mistook it for his. The change did not happen overnight. That is how these things work. It starts with harmless language, our kitchen, our mortgage, our street. Then when a repairman came by, Darren would say, "My wife handles the paperwork, but this is my place." Then when neighbors asked about the maple tree, he said, "I've been meaning to trim it." Then when Marlene came to stay after what she called her condo trouble, she said, "My son has such a lovely home." I corrected her once in the beginning. "I bought the house before we married." She smiled at me like I had spoken out of turn and said, "Of course, dear, but marriage changes these things." Marriage did not change the county title record. Marriage changed how comfortable they became ignoring it. I met Darren at a charity breakfast hosted by a business group downtown. He was charming then, or maybe I was lonely enough to call charm what was really confidence without accountability. He had a big laugh, a quick memory for names, and a gift for making ordinary stories sound like adventures. He told me I worked too hard, that I deserved someone who would make me put the laptop away, that he admired capable women because his mother had carried so much after his father left. I was 43, successful enough to be proud but tired enough to be flattered by being seen. When he brought soup to my porch during a flu and sat outside because he did not want to wake me, I thought, here is a man who notices. When he fixed the loose handle on my side gate without making a production of it, I thought, here is a man who helps. When he told me he loved how steady I was, I did not understand that one day he would resent me for the same steadiness he used as a bridge. The first year of marriage was not terrible. That is another reason women stay longer than strangers think they should. The beginning leaves receipts too. He made coffee on Sundays. He put gas in my car when the tank was low. He danced with me in the kitchen once to a song from the radio while pasta water boiled over. Marlene was demanding, but not yet resident. Nola was irresponsible, but not yet attached to my credit line. Darren had a sales job then, and though he changed companies twice in 3 years, he always had an explanation. Bad management, bad timing, bad commission structure, bad clients. I believed him because I wanted to be the kind of wife who did not assume failure meant character. I still believe people can fall. I simply no longer believe everyone who falls is trying to stand. By the 5th year, the house had become a hotel for his family and a workplace for me. Marlene's condo association charged her a special assessment, and she came to stay for a couple of weeks while she sorted out cash flow. That was 7 months ago. She brought 2 suitcases, 3 framed photos of Darren as a boy, a blood pressure cuff she used dramatically whenever she disliked a conversation, and a talent for making me feel like staff. She never asked where the clean towels were. She said, "We're out of guest towels," as if I were a department. She never asked if she could turn up the heat. She said, "This house is cold enough to make a person ill," then waited for me to adjust the thermostat. Every month there was some new bridge amount she needed until the next check arrived. The next check always arrived, the need never left. Nola was worse because she disguised taking as helplessness. She was 38, but she used the phrase, "I'm just figuring things out," the way other people used a driver's license. She had tried real estate, medical billing, online boutique resale, dog grooming, and something she called brand consulting that mostly involved photographing iced coffee. Each time she failed, Darren said she just needed family to believe in her. The first time I added her as an authorized user on my credit card, it was because she said her car needed tires and she could not get to interviews without it. The charge came through for tires, then gas, then groceries, then a salon visit because she had an interview, then a boutique purchase because she needed to look polished. When I questioned it, Marlene said, "You know how hard it is for younger women now." Nola was 38. I was 51 and paying her bill. Darren's fall was quieter. He lost his sales job after what he called a dispute over commission records. I later learned from one of his former coworkers that there had been questions about expense reimbursements. Nothing criminal, at least nothing anyone pursued, but enough that the company asked him to leave. He told neighbors he had chosen independence. He made business cards for Sutter Strategic Development. He bought a domain name. He took calls in the office with the door half closed, but I noticed the calls were usually to friends, former colleagues, or his mother. He spent mornings at coffee shops and afternoons talking about opportunities that never became income. When I asked about invoices, he said I did not understand business development. When I asked about savings, he said my constant focus on money made him feel emasculated. When I asked how long he expected me to carry the mortgage, utilities, insurance, food, Marlene's transfers, Nola's card, and his truck payment, he said, "I thought marriage was supposed to be partnership." Partnership is a word people like to use when they are holding an empty bucket under someone else's well. I work in payroll compliance. That means I spend my days finding patterns people hoped would stay invisible: duplicate reimbursements, ghost employees, misclassified contractors, suspicious transfers, missing approval chains. People think fraud is dramatic, but most of it is boring. It repeats. It rounds numbers. It uses the same excuse until the excuse becomes a trail. For years, I did not apply that part of my mind to my marriage because I thought doing so would be unloving. Then one Tuesday in March, I opened my banking app during lunch and saw 3 transfers in 1 week. $700 to Marlene, $423.19 to Nola's authorized card, and $1,050 for Darren's truck insurance. That same morning, Darren had left a note on the kitchen counter asking me to pick up steaks because his friend Curtis might come by for dinner. I sat at my desk staring at the transactions and felt something inside me go quiet. Not angry, not yet, just quiet enough to count. I started with bank statements, 4 years. I downloaded them month by month and sorted transfers by recipient. Marlene, Nola, Darren, household, mortgage, insurance, credit card, cash withdrawals. I created a spreadsheet because that is what I know how to do when a problem is too emotional to touch barehanded. The first total made me close my laptop and walk around the block. The second total made me call Ms. Rhodes. Her office was on the second floor of an old brick building above a tax preparer and a dentist. She was not the first attorney I called, but she was the first one who did not tell me to calm down or start with reconciliation. She listened for 40 minutes while I described the money, the house, the pressure, the way Darren had started insisting I come with him to Cedar Rapids Credit Union to discuss a family consolidation loan. He said it was for roof repair, household improvements, and restructuring some debt so we could all breathe. I had not liked the word all. It sounded crowded. Ms. Rhodes asked one question after I finished. Is his name on the deed? No. Has he ever signed a refinance or quitclaim related to the property? No. Has he ever represented himself as an owner to a lender? I think he is about to. She leaned back in her chair. Then before you argue with him about feelings, get the title record. Feelings are important, records are useful. Next week I ordered the certified county title record. The week after that I pulled my credit report, then I discovered a hard inquiry connected to Cedar Rapids Credit Union. Darren said he had only asked preliminary questions. The packet that arrived by email said otherwise. It listed him as applicant, me as co-applicant, and both of us as property owners. It included a contractor invoice for roof repair from Barker Ridge Construction. I did not recognize the company. At work, during a lunch break, I checked the state contractor registry. Barker Ridge had dissolved 2 years earlier. I printed the page, highlighted the inactive registration, and placed it in the folder under the bank statements. That was the day Ms. Rhodes told me to install a camera in the living room if I felt safe doing so, and if it recorded common areas of my own house. I did it the next Saturday while Darren was at a coffee meeting. and Marlene was at her lunch club spending money she said she did not have. For 6 days, the camera recorded nothing remarkable. Marlene watching daytime court shows, Nola pacing while talking on speakerphone, Darren opening the refrigerator and complaining there was no real food while standing in front of food. I almost felt silly. Then came 11:10 p.m. I opened the lower cabinet beneath the sink, reached past the dish soap, and pulled up the false panel my father had built there when I first bought the house. Inside was a waterproof document pouch, a manila envelope from Ms. Rhodes, and a flash drive taped to a folded kitchen towel. I took them out and laid them on the counter. Then, because I knew exactly what Darren, Marlene, and Nola were imagining in the dining room, I took the chef's knife from the block and began tapping it against the wooden cutting board. Chop, 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 the sound carried through the door. I could almost see them relaxing. The woman was in the kitchen. The woman was making food. The woman had been put back where they thought she belonged. There was no food on that cutting board. There was only wood, the knife, and the rhythm of their mistake. I had bought the silver serving platter years earlier at an estate sale 2 neighborhoods over. It was heavy, slightly tarnished, with a domed lid that caught light beautifully when polished. Darren had laughed at me when I brought it home. "You bought a rich lady turkey lid," he said. "I used it twice, once for roast chicken, once for dinner rolls. Then it sat on the top shelf, too formal for ordinary life. That night it became the most useful thing in my kitchen." First, I placed the county title record in the center of the platter. It was a certified copy from Lynn County, dated 3 weeks earlier, showing the property on Red Cedar Lane belonged to Wendy Hollies Sutter, sole owner. Hollies was my maiden name. Darren had moved in after we married. He had never been on the deed. Repetition had made him bold. It had not made him owner. Second, I placed the divorce petition to the left. Ms. Rhodes had prepared it after our 3rd meeting. I had not signed it yet, not because I was unsure, but because I was waiting for one more piece of proof. My attorney had told me there was no prize for announcing a divorce before I had secured my accounts, documented the spending, and understood the loan packet Darren was pushing me to sign. "A clean exit," she said, "is not the same as a fast exit." The petition listed financial coercion, misuse of authorized credit, verbal threats, attempted property encumbrance, and now, though Darren did not know it yet, physical assault supported by footage. Third, I placed the bank transfer ledger to the right. 4 years of transactions sorted by recipient, purpose, date, and notes. Mortgage payments from my account, insurance, property taxes, utilities, Darren's truck insurance after he said the premium surprised him, Marlene's monthly bridge money that somehow never bridged anything. Nola's credit card charges, salon, boutique, gym, gas, online furniture, a weekend hotel room she told me was for a professional seminar but later posted on social media as a girl's trip. I had highlighted the recurring transfers in yellow and the credit card charges in blue. The total made me feel sick the first time I saw it printed, not because I had been generous. Generosity is chosen. This had become expected. Fourth, I placed one page from the credit union loan packet at the bottom edge, partly visible like a trapdoor. Cedar Rapids Credit Union, home equity line of credit application, purpose, roof repair and household improvements. Applicant Darren Sutter, co-applicant Wendy Sutter, property owner Darren and Wendy Sutter. That line was false. The roof did not need repair. The contractor invoice attached to the packet came from a company that no longer legally existed. Darren thought I had not noticed. He thought I signed papers the way I washed dishes because someone told me to. Last, I placed a single printed still from the living room camera on top. It showed Darren's arm raised, my head turned, Marlene on the sofa, Nola looking up from her phone. Timestamp, 11:10:42 p.m. I covered everything with the silver lid, then I stood there for a moment, both hands on the sides of the platter, and listened. In the dining room, Darren said something low. Marlene laughed. Nola complained that she was starving. My cheek hurt. My hands were steady. When I opened the kitchen door, they were already at the table. Darren sat at the head, the chair he had claimed the year after we married, though I had bought the table before I knew him. Marlene sat to his right, napkin spread across her lap like a queen waiting for service. Nola sat to his left, phone beside her plate, one hand already holding a fork. The sight of the three of them like that should have broken my heart. Instead, it clarified it. They did not see a wife, a daughter-in-law, a sister-in-law, or the woman whose name was on every bill. They saw the delay between their hunger and their satisfaction. I placed the platter in the center of the table. The silver lid reflected their faces in curved, distorted shapes. Darren looked up at me with the smug impatience of a man who believed the room had returned to order. "Took you long enough," he said. "If this is another one of your sad freezer meals." "Lift the lid," I said. Something in my voice made him pause, only briefly. Then pride took over. He grabbed the handle and lifted. For a second, nobody understood what they were seeing. That was my favorite second, not because I enjoyed their confusion, but because it was the first honest silence that house had held in years. No performance, no hierarchy, just three people staring at the truth arranged like dinner. Nola was the first to speak. What is this? Marlene squinted at the papers. Where is the food? Darren saw the county seal before he saw anything else. His face changed by inches. The flush from his anger drained into something paler. Why do you have a title record on a dinner plate? Because you asked what was on the table, I said. This is what has been on the table for years. He grabbed the title record and scanned it. His eyes moved fast, then slower, then back to the top. This is a copy. Yes. Copies don't mean anything. The certified original is with Ms. Rhodes. His jaw tightened. He looked at the divorce petition next. He did not pick it up at first. Men like Darren believe documents become real only when they agree to read them. Finally, he lifted the first page and saw his name under respondent. His laugh came out too sharp. You think you're divorcing me because I yelled about dinner? No, I said. I am divorcing you because you built a life where yelling about dinner at 11 o'clock made sense to you. Marlene snatched the ledger. Her eyes moved over the highlighted lines. I watched her lips part when she found her own name. Marlene Sutter, monthly transfer $650, $650, $700, $900, emergency dental, condo assessment, grocery help, Cash App reimbursement. You printed private family matters, she said. I printed my bank records. You are humiliating us. I looked at her for a long second. No, I am labeling the meal. Nola leaned over the ledger and saw her name. She reached for her purse. I said the card was canceled while I was in the kitchen. She froze. What? The authorized user card, canceled. The confirmation is in my email. You can keep the plastic if you want a souvenir. Darren slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the silver lid jump. Enough. His voice filled the room again, but it did not land the way it used to. You don't get to stage some little courtroom dinner because you had a long day. I had a long marriage, I said. This is my house. No, Darren, it is not. My name is Sutter, your name is Sutter, that makes it ours. The county disagrees. Marlene stood, clutching the ledger like she wanted to tear it but feared what that would admit. I will not be spoken to this way in my son's home. I reached into my pocket, took out my phone and placed it on the table with the non-emergency police number already open. You are in my home, and tonight, after what happened in the living room, no one is going to pretend otherwise. The mention of the living room changed the temperature. Darren's eyes flicked toward the bookshelf. He noticed the camera then, really noticed it. People look past cameras until they need the past to disappear. His mouth tightened. You recorded me. I recorded my living room. You set me up. I almost laughed. It came out as a breath. I came home from work. You hit me. You said I own nothing. The camera did not invent that. Nola stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. This is insane. Darren, tell her she can't do this. Darren did not answer her. He was reading the credit union page now. That was the page that scared him most. His thumb pressed over the false property owner line as if hiding it from me could hide it from everyone. Where did you get this? From the email confirmation you forwarded to yourself from my laptop, I said. You forgot my compliance software log sign-in locations. You also forgot the credit union copies the real property owner when a loan file reaches final review. His face went still. That stillness was worse than his shouting. It meant he was calculating. We are going to the credit union tomorrow, he said finally. Yes, I said, we are. You will fix this. No. You will tell them you got emotional. No. You will tell them you consented and you got confused because we had an argument. No. Marlene stepped toward me. Wendy, listen to me. Marriage is not a business audit. You cannot reduce family to numbers and papers. I looked down at the ledger in her hand. You did that before I did. For a moment, I thought Darren might reach for me again. His hand flexed at his side. His eyes moved to the camera, to my phone, to the divorce petition, to the title record. He knew the room had changed, not because he had become less angry, but because anger no longer gave him control. He turned away first. Fine, he said. Tomorrow, we let the bank explain marital property to you. Credit union, I said. What? It's a credit union, and yes, tomorrow we let them read. He laughed without humor. You think a credit union is going to care about a dramatic dinner? No, I said, they care about false loan documents. That was the first time fear crossed his face cleanly. He tried to hide it by reaching for the loan page, but I put my hand on it first. The originals are not here. Of course they're not, he said, because you're a coward. No, I said, because I work in compliance. Nobody ate that night. Marlene retreated to the guest room she had occupied for 7 months while claiming she was only staying until her condo situation settled. Nola disappeared into the den and made 3 phone calls in an angry whisper. Darren went into the downstairs office and closed the door hard enough to shake a framed photo in the hallway. I did not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, my cheeks swelling, and began doing what I had done professionally for 23 years. I built the cleanest file I could build before sunrise. At 12:18 a.m., I downloaded the living room camera footage and sent a copy to Ms. Rhodes with the subject line, "It happened." At 12:26, I emailed Mr. Holloway, the credit union manager whose name was on the loan packet. I wrote that I would appear in person at 9:30 a.m., that I did not consent to any home equity loan, that there were serious inaccuracies in the application, and that my attorney would attend. At 12:41, I canceled Marlene's automatic transfer. At 12:44, I removed Nola as an authorized user on my card and froze the card for reissue. At 1:05, I changed the passwords on my email, banking app, payroll portal, and phone account. At 1:22, I printed the login history showing Darren's access from the home office computer to my personal email. At 1:48, I took photos of the red mark on my cheek in the bathroom mirror under bright light because Ms. Rhodes had once told me, "Documentation feels cold until it is the only warm thing protecting you." At 2:07 a.m., Darren came out of the office. I heard him before I saw him, not footsteps exactly, a hesitation, the sound of someone trying to decide whether to intimidate or persuade. He stood in the kitchen doorway wearing the expression he used when he wanted to look injured rather than angry. "This has gone too far," he said. "I kept typing, it went too far when you hit me. I lost my temper, you know I've been under pressure. I know exactly what pressure looks like." "You think you do?" He came closer, but not too close. He had remembered the camera. "You have no idea what it is like to be a man in this economy, trying to carry a household while your wife treats you like a failed employee." I looked up then, carry a household. He flinched, not much, enough. I turned the laptop slightly so he could see the transfer ledger. "Darren, if this household were a payroll file, you would not be listed as management, you would be listed as recurring expense." His face hardened. "That is the kind of thing I mean, you talk like a machine." "No, I am finally an itemized one." He stared at me, then reached toward the laptop. I closed it before his hand touched the screen. "Don't send Holloway an email," he said. "Tell him you were emotional, tell him we had an argument and you don't want to derail the file. You know, if that loan collapses, my mother loses her condo. Your mother's condo is not secured by my roof. Nola's credit will get destroyed. Nola's credit was not my marriage vow. My business needs breathing room. Your business has no invoices." He leaned both hands on the table. "You are trying to ruin me." "No, I am refusing to be collateral." His eyes changed at that word. Collateral. He hated that I understood the language of the thing he had tried to do. "You'll regret making me your enemy." I felt the old fear rise, but it no longer filled the room. It had edges now. "You made yourself the applicant," I said. "You made yourself the co-owner. You made yourself the man on camera." He straightened. "You're going to sit there all night acting superior." "I'm going to sit here until I finish sending my attorney what she needs." He looked toward the bookshelf camera again, then turned and walked out. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. The Sutter family group chat had begun. I had never liked that chat. It had been created years earlier for Thanksgiving schedules and became over time a small theater where Marlene could perform suffering and Darren could perform patience. There were cousins, 2 aunts and uncle in Des Moines, Nola, Darren, Marlene, and me. I rarely wrote in it. That night, Darren did. "Darren, Wendy is having one of her episodes. She came home angry, refused to cook, and is now threatening divorce over a family loan. Marlene, please pray, the devil gets into marriages through pride. Nola, she canceled my card in the middle of the night like a psycho. Aunt Carol, what is going on? Darren, she's trying to steal my house." I read that sentence 3 times. "My house. Not our house, not the house, my house." Darren continued before anyone could ask questions. "Darren, I have tried to be patient. She works in payroll and thinks every family problem is a spreadsheet. Tomorrow we're going to the credit union and hopefully someone normal can talk sense into her." Then he added something that made my hands go cold. "Darren, if anything happens, everyone should know she has been unstable for months." There it was, the narrative he planned to use if documents failed. Unstable, emotional, one of her episodes, words that make a woman's truth sound like weather. I took screenshots, every message, every timestamp, every reply. Then I saved them to the same folder as the credit union packet. At 2:30, Marlene texted me privately from 2 rooms away. Wendy, whatever happened tonight, remember that destroying a family is a sin. I typed back one sentence, so is using one. She did not respond. At 3:05, Nola sent me a photo of the declined card notice from her banking app. Under it she wrote, "You embarrassed me at checkout, you're sick." I replied, "The account is closed, do not attempt further charges." Then I turned off notifications, not because I was calm, but because I needed to protect the calm I had. The hours before dawn stretched strangely. I printed the family chat screenshots. I found the state contractor registry page showing Barker Ridge Construction inactive. I printed the loan packet email header showing it had been forwarded from my account at 6:42 p.m. 2 days earlier when I had been driving home from work and Darren had been alone in the office. I printed the access log from my laptop. I printed the credit card cancellation confirmation. I printed the automatic transfer cancellation confirmation. Then I put everything in order because order was the only thing in that house still willing to help me. By 5:40, the kitchen table looked like a small courtroom. Title record, divorce petition, transfer ledger, loan packet, contractor registry, email access log, family chat screenshots, camera still, photo of my cheek. I sat there in the dim blue light before sunrise and remembered something my father used to say when we balanced his checkbook at the kitchen table after my mother died. Numbers are not cold, Wendy. People are cold. Numbers are honest. At 6:10 in the morning, the house was quiet in the false way a house becomes quiet when everyone inside is awake and pretending not to be. I showered carefully, letting lukewarm water run over my face. The red mark on my cheek had darkened. I put on a navy dress, a gray blazer, and the small pearl earrings my father gave me when I got my first compliance job. Then I made coffee for myself, only myself. That sounds petty unless you have spent years making coffee for adults who never once asked whether you wanted a cup. I poured it into a travel mug and stood at the kitchen window watching frost steam off the lawn. Darren entered at 7:05 wearing a dress shirt he had not ironed well. He looked tired but not sorry. Men like Darren do not mistake exhaustion for remorse. Marlene followed in a long cardigan, her hair sprayed into place. Nola came last, sunglasses on her head though the sun was barely up, tapping furiously at her phone. Darren looked at my cheek. Something passed through his face, too quick to name, then he looked away. "We're going together," he said. "No, I'm driving myself." "You're my wife. I am the property owner." Nola scoffed. "You're really going to act like that now?" I turned to her. "Your card is canceled. Your balance through midnight is printed. If you want to dispute a charge, call the bank." She stared at me. "You are such a cold person." "No," I said, "I am finally an itemized one." Darren grabbed his keys. "You think papers make you powerful?" "No," I said, "I think papers make lies expensive." He left first, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. Marlene looked at me as if waiting for me to soften. I had softened for her many times, when she said her fixed income was not enough, when she said Darren was sensitive because his father had been hard on him, when she said Nola was still finding herself, when she said a good woman kept a family together. I had softened until there was almost nothing firm left in me. "You will regret this," she said. "I already regret waiting this long." Before I left, I walked through the house once, not dramatically, practically. I checked the back door, I checked the office. I took photos of the silver platter still on the counter, the dining room table, the guest room door, the den where Nola's shopping bag sat open with tissue paper spilling out like evidence of a party nobody had earned. I put the flash drive in my purse. I put the document folder in my tote, then I locked the front door behind me. Ms. Rhodes was already waiting in the parking lot of Cedar Rapids Credit Union when I arrived. Her office was 10 minutes away, but she had beat me there because she was the kind of woman who treated time as part of strategy. She sat in a silver sedan with a leather folder on the passenger seat, a paper cup of coffee in the console, and a face calm enough to make me feel less like I was walking into a storm and more like I was entering a meeting. She got out when I parked. She looked at my cheek, not theatrically, not with pity, carefully like she was noting an exhibit. "Did you sleep?" "No." "Did you eat?" "No." "Did you bring the full packet?" "Yes." "Good, after this you eat something. Your body is not just a container for evidence." That almost made me cry, not because it was sentimental, because it was practical in a way nobody in my house had been practical about me. I handed her the new screenshots. She reviewed them on the hood of her car, page by page, the cold wind lifting one corner until she pinned it with her finger. When she reached Darren's unstable comment, she paused. People who lie in writing save us time. I thought you'd say it was bad. It is bad for him. She placed the screenshots behind the camera still. Listen to me carefully. In that room, say less than you want to. Let Darren explain. Let him call it his house. Let him describe the loan. Let him minimize last night. Let him use the words emotional and unstable if he wants. Every sentence he volunteers will sit next to the title record. What if I freeze? You won't, but if you do, I'll ask one question at a time. What if he gets angry? Then he gets angry in a credit union conference room with witnesses. She closed the folder. One more thing, do not ask them to punish him, ask them to read the file. Institutions understand files better than pain. Darren's truck pulled in at 9:24. Marlene sat beside him, upright and pale. Nola got out of the back seat, still texting. Darren looked annoyed when he saw Ms. Rhodes. You brought a lawyer. Ms. Rhodes smiled politely. Good morning, Mr. Sutter. He ignored her and looked at me. This is a family loan meeting. No, I said, this is a loan meeting involving my property. His nostrils flared. You're embarrassing yourself. Ms. Rhodes opened the credit union door. Then let's go inside and clarify that. Mr. Holloway met us in the lobby. He was a tall man in his 50s with wire-frame glasses and a credit union badge clipped to his jacket. He had the careful expression of someone who had read my midnight email twice and understood the morning would not be routine. Mrs. Sutter, he said, shaking my hand first. Mr. Sutter, Ms. Rhodes, thank you for coming in. We'll use the conference room. Darren stepped forward. I want to say right away that my wife sent some emotional messages last night after a disagreement, but we're here to move forward. Mr. Holloway's face remained neutral. We'll review the file in the conference room. The room had a rectangular table, 6 chairs, a wall-mounted screen, and a small tray with coffee pods no one touched. A younger loan officer named Elise sat near the screen with a laptop open. A notary journal lay closed beside her. That detail mattered. Darren saw it and relaxed. He thought the notary journal meant the process was still moving. He thought momentum was on his side. Men like Darren often confuse scheduled procedure with approval. The loan packet was stacked neatly in front of Mr. Holloway. I noticed Darren notice it. His shoulders loosened slightly, as if the sight of official paper reassured him that his version could still become real. We sat. Darren chose the chair at the head of the table before Mr. Holloway could. Marlene sat beside him, Nola beside her. I sat across from Darren. Ms. Rhodes sat to my right. She placed her leather folder on the table, unopened. Mr. Holloway began. We are here to review the home equity line of credit application submitted under the Sutter household name. Before any closing can proceed, we need to address concerns raised by Mrs. Sutter regarding ownership, consent, stated loan purpose, and application accuracy. Darren laughed under his breath. This is what I mean. She works in compliance, so everything becomes some federal case. We need roof money, that's all. Married people share houses. Mr. Holloway looked at him. Is the roof currently under contract for repair? Yes, Darren said too quickly. Ms. Rhodes made a small note. Mr. Holloway turned a page. The invoice attached is from Barker Ridge Construction. That's right, Darren said. Elise, the loan officer, looked at her laptop but did not speak. Mr. Holloway continued. Mrs. Sutter, did you request roof repair from Barker Ridge Construction? No. Did you sign a contract with them? No. Did you authorize Mr. Sutter to list the property as jointly owned? No. Darren leaned forward. She knew we were doing this. She forgets things when she's overwhelmed. Wendy, tell them you knew. I looked at him, across the table under fluorescent lights. He looked less like the man who had filled my house with fear and more like a man trying to force fog into a jar. I knew you wanted me to sign something, I said. I did not know you had already represented yourself as co-owner. Marlene cut in. He is her husband. This is ridiculous. Of course he has an interest in the home. Ms. Rhodes opened her folder for the first time. She slid one document across the table to Mr. Holloway. Certified county title record, sole owner Wendy Holly Sutter, property purchased before the marriage, no recorded transfer, no quitclaim deed, no mortgage refinance adding Mr. Sutter, no lien authorizing this application as submitted. Mr. Holloway read silently. Elise leaned slightly to see. Darren stared at the paper as if it had betrayed him personally. That is not the whole story, he said. It is the county's story, Ms. Rhodes said. For a loan secured by real property, that story matters. Darren's face reddened. So what? She was going to sign. That makes the ownership line a technicality. Mr. Holloway looked up. Consent obtained under pressure is not a technicality. No one pressured her. Ms. Rhodes slid a second document forward. Before we discuss pressure, I want the record to reflect that my client does not consent to this loan. She did not consent last night. She does not consent this morning. She is not confused, emotional, or uncertain. Darren turned toward me, lowering his voice in the tone he used when he wanted to sound private in public. Wendy, stop. You are making this worse for yourself. Ms. Rhodes did not look at him. Mr. Sutter, please do not address my client that way. He laughed. She's my wife. For today's purpose, Ms. Rhodes said, she is the sole property owner whose signature you attempted to route through a closing packet with false ownership information. Nola whispered, "This is insane," but her voice had lost its confidence. Mr. Holloway turned another page in the packet. Mr. Sutter, the stated purpose of this loan is roof repair and household improvements. Can you provide current contractor verification? I already provided the invoice. Elise finally spoke. Barker Ridge Construction dissolved in 2024. Their state contractor registration is inactive. Darren's mouth opened, then closed. Marlene put a hand on his arm. Darren, maybe there was a mistake. Ms. Rhodes slid the contractor registry printout forward, inactive for 26 months. Darren looked at the paper, then at me. You researched the contractor. I researched the invoice attached to a loan against my house. You see, he said, turning to Mr. Holloway, this is what she does. She digs, she investigates, she turns everything into a prosecution. Mr. Holloway did not answer. That was the first time I saw Darren realize his performance was not being received the way it usually was. At home, volume worked. In that room, records had better posture. Ms. Rhodes slid the bank transfer ledger forward, not dramatically, just enough. There are no recent roof estimates in my client's financial records. There are, however, recurring payments to Mrs. Marlene Sutter, multiple payments covering Ms. Nola Sutter's credit card balances, and evidence of personal debt obligations under Mr. Sutter's name that appear to align with the amount requested. Nola sat back. Why is my name in there? Because my account paid your bills, I said. You offered. I offered help. You built a lifestyle. Marlene's face hardened. How dare you bring family support into a bank? I looked at her. Darren brought my house into a bank. Mr. Holloway reviewed the ledger. His expression did not change much, but I saw the moment the file shifted in his mind from messy family dispute to institutional risk. That was the thing about evidence. It did not need to shout. It only needed to sit where lies had been sitting and refused to move. Darren pushed back from the table. This is a setup. She's punishing me because we had a fight. Ms. Rhodes removed another page from her folder. Mr. Holloway, I would like to provide printed screenshots from the Sutter family group chat beginning at 2:07 a.m. Mr. Sutter represented to multiple relatives that Mrs. Sutter was unstable and attempting to steal his house. He also stated that today's meeting would allow someone normal to talk sense into her. Darren's eyes widened. That is private family communication. Ms. Rhodes looked at him. It is written communication relevant to claims of instability, ownership, and pressure. Mr. Holloway accepted the screenshots. He read the unstable line. Elise read it after him. Marlene stared at the table. Nola suddenly became deeply interested in her manicure. Darren said, I was upset. So was I said. I didn't falsify ownership. That sentence stayed in the room. Ms. Rhodes removed one final page from her folder. There was also an incident last night at 11:10 p.m. in the living room of Mrs. Sutter's home. We have preserved the footage. I am not playing it here unless necessary, but I am providing a timestamped still and transcript excerpt relevant to coercion and consent. She slid the page to Mr. Holloway. He read it. Elise read it next. I watched their eyes move to the line. A woman who owns nothing should at least know how to cook. Then the timestamp, then the description of Darren striking me. Mr. Holloway looked at my cheek, not long, not rudely, just enough to connect paper to person. Darren stood. That is private. No, I said quietly, that was in my living room. You recorded me without permission. Ms. Rhodes said, I would not advise focusing on that argument right now. Darren pointed at her. You don't get to come between a husband and wife. Mr. Holloway closed the loan packet. The sound was soft, but it ended everything. Mr. Sutter, he said, this credit union will not proceed with this application. The file is frozen pending internal review. The notary appointment is canceled. No home equity product will be opened on this property without direct written consent from Mrs. Sutter, verified independently and outside your presence. Additionally, because the application contains inaccurate ownership information and questionable supporting documentation, we will refer it for compliance review. Darren stared at him. You're taking her side. We are taking the side of the title record, Mr. Holloway said. Marlene's mouth tightened. Nola looked at Darren with something like panic. It was the first time that morning she seemed to understand that if the loan died, her bills did not simply become someone else's problem, they became hers. Darren looked at me then, and I saw the real lost land, not love, not marriage, control. He had believed the house was a stage where he could perform authority until everyone accepted it. He had believed my income, my patience, my signature, my kitchen, and my silence were all renewable resources. He had believed that if he could get me to sit at that table under fluorescent lights with his mother watching and a notary waiting, I would do what I had done so many times before. Make the problem smaller by making myself smaller. You served me papers at dinner, he said, voice low, shaking with anger, then brought a lawyer to breakfast. No, I said, I brought records to the place you tried to use them. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Ms. Rhodes gathered her folder. Mrs. Sutter will have no further discussion about the loan. Any communication regarding divorce proceedings should come to my office. Marlene finally lost the polished sorrow she had worn all morning. Divorce proceedings, she repeated. You would destroy your marriage over money. I stood, my legs felt steady. No, Marlene, money only showed me the shape of what was already destroyed. Darren tried once more in the parking lot. He waited until Ms. Rhodes was speaking to Mr. Holloway near the entrance and stepped close enough that I could smell coffee on his breath. You think you won, he said. I looked at him. The winter sun was bright behind his head. For years I had studied his face for weather. Was he angry? Was he tired? Was he about to blame me? Was he in a good enough mood to discuss a bill? That morning, for the first time, I did not need a forecast. I think I am done losing quietly, I said. You can't keep me out of the house. I'm not deciding that in a parking lot. I live there. For now, you can contact Ms. Rhodes. His hand curled around his keys. For 1 second, the old fear moved through me, quick and familiar. Then I saw Ms. Rhodes watching from the sidewalk. I saw the security camera over the credit union door. I saw Darren see both of those things. He stepped back. Marlene called from the truck, Darren, come on. Nola was already in the back seat, phone pressed to her ear, probably telling someone a version where she had been attacked by paperwork. I drove home alone. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different, though nothing had changed. Same brick front, same maple tree, same mailbox leaning slightly to the left because Darren had promised to fix it and never did, but the house no longer looked like a place where I was waiting for permission to be safe. It looked like a place with my name on it. That might sound small if you have always been allowed to own what you paid for. To me that day it felt like oxygen. I did not go inside right away. I sat in the car and called Ms. Rhodes. She answered on the second ring. He will escalate, she said. As I know. We filed today. I'm going to request temporary exclusive use of the home based on the incident, the footage, and the financial coercion around the loan. Until a judge signs anything, do not physically block him from entering if he has established residence. But do not be alone with him. If he threatens you, call 911. If he shows up with family, call non-emergency and have a record made. Change passwords, preserve everything. I already changed passwords. Oh, good. I canceled the cards and transfers. Oh, good. There was a pause, then her voice softened by 1 degree. How are you? I looked through the windshield at the front door. I don't know yet. That is a reasonable answer. Inside, the house smelled like old coffee and Marlene's perfume. The dining table still held the silver platter. The documents were gone because I had taken the originals and left only copies, but the lid sat upside down beside the empty plates like a moon that had fallen from the ceiling. No one had cleaned anything. That was fitting. They had always waited for me to clean up the consequences. I washed the plates, not because they deserved it, because I wanted my sink empty. Then I took the silver cloche, washed it by hand, dried it with a soft towel, and set it on the counter. When sunlight hit it, I could still see the faint, warped reflection of my face. Darren did not come home until after dark. He came with Marlene and Nola behind him as if numbers could restore authority. I was not alone. My neighbor, Ruth Bell, sat at my kitchen table with a mug of tea and a paperback novel. Ruth was 72, widowed, and had lived across the street since before I bought the house. I had called her because Ms. Rhodes told me not to be alone, and Ruth said, I'll bring tea in my bad hip. Men behave better when there are witnesses and old women. Darren stopped when he saw her. Ruth looked up from her book, Evening. Marlene blinked. Why is she here? I said, because I asked her to be. Darren's eyes moved around the kitchen. Where are the papers? With my attorney. I'm getting clothes. Fine. I'm sleeping here. Ms. Rhodes filed today. Until there is an order, I'm not going to argue with you about entry, but I will not sleep in the same room with you. Ruth is staying until you leave the common areas. He laughed bitterly. You have a neighbor babysitting me. Ruth took a sip of tea. If the shoe fits, Darren. It was almost funny, almost. He went upstairs. I heard drawers open and close. Marlene followed him, muttering about betrayal. Nola stayed in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. Without the credit card, she looked younger and meaner, like a teenager denied car keys. You know, he only did the loan because Mom needed help. I looked at her. Your mother's condo fees are not my mortgage. You married into the family. I did not marry into debt without consent. You act like you're better than us because you have a job. No, I said, I act like my job should not make me your emergency fund. Nola's eyes filled, but not with sorrow, with fury at being named accurately. You're going to be alone, Wendy. Ruth turned a page in her book. Alone is underrated when the alternative keeps stealing your card. Nola stared at her. Ruth did not look up. Darren came down with 2 duffel bags. I'm staying at a hotel, he said, as if leaving had been his choice all along. My lawyer will destroy this. Then your lawyer can call mine. He walked to the front door, then turned. For one brief moment, I saw the man I had married, or maybe the man I had invented from the pieces he showed me in the beginning. The man who brought soup when I had the flu, the man who once fixed my porch light without being asked, the man who said he loved how capable I was before capability became the thing he punished me for. I felt grief then, not enough to stop him, enough to remind me that leaving is not painless just because it is right. You really want to end 8 years like this? He asked. I touched my cheek. You ended it at 11:10. He left. Marlene left with him. Nola followed, dragging her shopping bag with the cream ribbon. The door closed. Ruth and I sat in silence until headlights backed out of the driveway. Then Ruth said, Do you want me to make eggs? I laughed. It came out half sob, half surprise. No. Good, I didn't want to. That was the first normal laugh I had in that house in a long time. The next 3 weeks were not cinematic. No one tells you that after the dramatic moment, life becomes paperwork, police report, attorney meeting, temporary order hearing, password resets, credit reports, card disputes, locksmith appointment, inventory of personal property, more screenshots than any human should ever have to print. Darren's lawyer sent a letter accusing me of financial cruelty. Ms. Rhodes responded with the loan packet, title record, transfer ledger, camera still, contractor registry, and family chat screenshots. The tone of the letters changed after that. A judge granted temporary exclusive use of the home pending the divorce proceedings. That phrase sounded sterile when Ms. Rhodes said it, temporary exclusive use. But when I stood in my hallway with the signed order in my hand, it felt like someone had opened a window in a room where I had been holding my breath for years. Darren could arrange a supervised pickup of personal belongings. He could not live there. He could not enter without agreement. He could not contact me except through counsel about the house or divorce. When the locksmith came, he was a cheerful man named Owen who talked about weather and old door frames. He changed the front lock, the back lock, and the garage entry. He asked if I wanted extra keys. 2, I said, 1 for me, 1 for my neighbor Ruth. No husband copy, he asked casually, then saw my face. Sorry. It's all right. But it was not all right, not yet. I stood in the doorway after he left, holding the 2 new keys in my palm. They were silver and ordinary and cut clean. I thought a new key would feel triumphant. It did not. It felt heavy. A key is not freedom by itself. It is only proof that a boundary has hardware. The supervised pickup happened on a Saturday morning in November. Ms. Rhodes did not need to attend, but Ruth did. So did a deputy because Darren's attorney had agreed that a neutral presence would make things smoother. Darren arrived with a rented cargo van, Marlene in the passenger seat and Nola following in her own car because apparently even collecting belongings required an audience. I had spent the previous 2 nights making an inventory, Darren's clothes, his golf clubs, his boxes of business books, his printer, his framed college diploma, 2 lamps he bought before the marriage. The espresso machine he claimed was his because he picked it out, though I had paid for it. Ms. Rhodes told me to let that one go. Freedom is worth more than appliances, she said. But some things were not his. He tried to take my father's tool chest from the garage. It was a green metal chest with worn handles and my father's initials scratched into the side. Darren had used it for years without asking, and somewhere along the way he had begun calling it his tools. I stepped between him and the chest. That stays. He laughed. I use those tools more than you ever did. They were my father's. You don't even know what half of them are. I know whose they are. The deputy looked at the inventory sheet. This item isn't listed for removal. Darren's face tightened. You called a cop to guard a tool chest. No, I said, I made an inventory so nobody has to guess. Marlene stood near the garage door, arms folded. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. For the first time in weeks, that did not pierce me. I looked at the tool chest, at the scratches my father's hands had made, at the drawer where he used to keep tiny envelopes of screws labeled in pencil. No, I said. My father taught me to keep records. Darren tried one more thing before leaving. He spotted the silver cloche on the kitchen counter where I had placed it after washing it. That's mine too, he said suddenly. I turned slowly. What? The serving thing. My mother hosted Thanksgiving with it. Marlene immediately joined him. It was used for family holidays. I stared at both of them, almost impressed by the audacity. I bought it at an estate sale before you moved in. Darren shrugged. Prove it. I opened a drawer, took out the small folder I had prepared, and removed a faded receipt from the estate sale company. $38. Silver-plated covered server, paid by Wendy Hollies. I had kept it because my father's habit of saving receipts had infected me long before I knew how often it would save me. Ruth, standing by the refrigerator, whispered, Lord, I love paperwork. The deputy looked at the receipt and then at Darren. Sir, keep moving. Darren's ears turned red. It was a small moment, not dramatic enough for a movie, but it mattered to me not because of the platter itself, because he had tried even then to take the object that had exposed him and make it his. That was Darren's gift. He did not only want things, he wanted the story attached to them. When he finally drove away, the house felt emptied in layers. His clothes were gone, his boxes were gone, Marlene's blood pressure cuff was gone, Nola's shopping bags were gone, but the house did not feel instantly peaceful. It felt stunned. Rooms, remember, the office still held the dent in the carpet where Darren's chair had been. The guest room still smelled faintly like Marlene's powder. The den still had a sticky ring on the side table from Nola's iced coffee. I spent the afternoon cleaning, not frantically, not like a woman trying to erase evidence, but like a woman returning objects to their proper jurisdiction. The credit union review finished before the divorce did. Mr. Holloway called Ms. Rhodes first, then sent a written confirmation. The loan application had been permanently declined. The credit union would not pursue further action against Darren at that time, but they retained the file internally and noted misrepresentation of ownership and unverifiable supporting documentation. It was not the dramatic punishment some people might want. He did not go to prison. He was not dragged away. Life is not always that kind of story, but he lost the loan. He lost the ability to use my property as collateral. He lost the clean version of events, and in the divorce negotiations that mattered. Darren fought hardest over two things, the house and the story. He could not win the house. The title was clean, purchased before marriage, paid by me, maintained by me, not refinanced into his name. No major contribution he could prove beyond occasional repairs he exaggerated until receipts reduced them to hardware store runs. But the story was harder. He told relatives I had blindsided him. He said I was cold, calculating, obsessed with money. He said he slapped me only after I screamed in his face. He said the camera angle made it look worse. He said I had planned the whole thing because I wanted to replace him with my career. For a few weeks, some people believed him. That hurt less than I expected. Maybe because by then, being misunderstood by people who had benefited from my silence did not feel like an emergency anymore. Aunt Carol eventually called me. She was Marlene's sister, a woman who made casseroles for every illness and somehow knew every family argument within 30 minutes. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won. Wendy, she said, I read what Darren wrote in the chat. I know. And I read what Nola wrote. I know. There was a long pause. Marlene told me you trapped him. I looked out the window at the maple tree. I came home from work. Another pause. Did he really hit you? Oh, yes. Was there really a loan? Oh, yes. And the house is really only yours? Oh, yes. She exhaled. It sounded like someone setting down a heavy grocery bag. Then I am sorry. I did not expect that, thank you. I don't know what Marlene expected you to do. Yes, you do, I said gently. She was quiet for a long moment. Yes, she said, I suppose I do. That call mattered more than it should have. Not because I needed the family to approve, because one person inside their circle had looked at the facts and chosen not to pretend. Nola never apologized. She sent one email through Darren's attorney demanding reimbursement for reward points she claimed she lost when I closed the card. Ms. Rhodes printed it, laughed once, and filed it under miscellaneous nonsense. Marlene sent a handwritten letter on rose-bordered stationery. The first page was scripture, the second page was accusation, the third page was a list of expenses she believed I had morally agreed to continue paying because family support should not end abruptly. I did not respond. I put the letter in the file. Then, for the first time since she moved in, I turned the guest room into something else. I made it a reading room. Nothing grand, a used armchair from Facebook Marketplace, a small lamp, a bookshelf, a blue rug Marlene would have called too bright. I put my father's green tool chest in the closet, not hidden, just safe. Ruth came over the day I finished arranging the room and stood in the doorway with her hands on her hips. "Looks peaceful," she said. "That was the goal. You know what it needs." "What?" "A bad painting." I laughed. "Why?" "Because nobody with a bad painting is trying to impress Marlene." So we went to a thrift store and bought a terrible painting of a duck standing beside a lake with the expression of a retired judge. I hung it over the chair. It made me smile every time I saw it. Peace, I learned, is sometimes a bad duck painting in a room where no one criticizes your curtains. Darren's next move came through the mail. A package arrived at my office. No return name. Inside was my wedding album. For a moment I could not breathe. I closed my office door and sat at my desk staring at the cover. Ivory linen, silver script, Wendy and Darren, June 14. There are objects that hold too much of a life to be touched casually. I opened it anyway. There I was at 43 in a cream dress, smiling so widely I barely recognized myself. Darren beside me, hand on my waist, Marlene in lavender, Nola holding champagne. My father was already gone by then. Ruth had attended and cried during the vows. In the photos, everyone looked kind. That is the danger of photographs. They preserve light without preserving truth. A sticky note was attached to the first page. In Darren's handwriting, "This used to mean something before you became this." I stared at the sentence until the words blurred. Then I did what the old Wendy would not have done. I scanned the note, saved it to the file, placed the album in a box, and mailed it to Ms. Rhodes. She called that afternoon. "He wants a reaction." "I know." "Are you giving him one?" "No." "Oh, good." But after work, I drove home and cried in the driveway for 12 minutes. Not because I wanted him back, because I wanted back the version of myself who had not yet learned how expensive love could become when offered to someone who counted on your shame. One Saturday, Ruth came over while I was sorting boxes in the dining room. The table was covered with things I had not known what to do with. Old holiday cards, duplicate kitchen tools, a stack of placemats Marlene had criticized every Thanksgiving, and the silver cloche. Ruth picked it up and turned it over. "Keeping this?" "Yes." "Good, it has attitude." I smiled. "I'm selling the table." She looked at the dark wood surface. "You sure?" "I bought it before him, but it feels like him now." "That happens." A young couple from Marion bought it 2 days later. They came with a pickup truck and a toddler who kept trying to climb into my flower bed. The woman ran her hand over the table and said, "It's beautiful. We host Sunday dinner every week." I almost told her to make sure everyone who ate at it also helped clear it. Instead, I said, "I hope it brings you better conversations than it brought me." She laughed, not knowing. They loaded it, paid cash, and drove away. The dining room looked enormous when it was empty. For 3 days I left it that way. No table, no chairs, just sunlight on the floor where years of meals had happened around my exhaustion. Then I bought a smaller table. Round, oak, 4 chairs, no head of the table. That mattered to me more than I can explain. The divorce finalized 9 months after the night of the platter. Darren received a modest settlement for certain marital assets unrelated to the house. Less than he wanted, more than my anger thought he deserved, exactly what Ms. Rhodes said was reasonable enough to end the fight without feeding it. He signed after his attorney explained that pushing further would open more discussion of the loan packet, the footage, and the financial records. Marlene moved back to her condo after borrowing money from a cousin. Nola got a retail job at the same boutique where she used to spend my money. I know that because Ruth saw her there and reported it with unnecessary delight. "Was she nice?" I asked. Ruth shrugged. "She was employed. That was enough for me." I did not hear from Darren directly again until almost a year after the slap. It was October, cold rain. I was volunteering at a women's shelter fundraising dinner downtown because Ms. Rhodes had asked if I would help with donor check-in. The shelter served women leaving situations that looked different from mine and exactly like mine because control wears many costumes. Some women had bruises, some had empty bank accounts, some had husbands everyone liked. Some had mothers-in-law who called abuse family business. I did not tell my story there. I checked names, handed out programs, and made sure the silent auction sheets had working pens. The kitchen borrowed serving pieces from volunteers, and I brought the silver cloche. I had not used it since that night. When I set it on the prep table, one of the shelter staff, a woman named Teresa, said, "That is gorgeous." "It has history," I said. "Good history." I looked at my reflection in the curved lid. Eventually. Later, during dessert service, I stepped into the hallway for a quiet minute and saw Darren near the entrance. He was wearing a dark coat I remembered buying him. He looked thinner, not ruined, not homeless, not destroyed in the dramatic way people online might wish for, just smaller somehow, like someone who had lost the room he used to expand inside. He saw me before I could decide whether to step back. "Wendy," he said. I nodded once. "Darren." He looked past me toward the dining hall. "I didn't know you were involved with this." "I am. My company bought a table." He said it quickly, maybe so I would know he had work, maybe so I would know he was not defeated, maybe so he would know. "That's good," I said. Silence sat between us. I did not rush to fill it. Old Wendy would have. Old Wendy would have asked how he was, whether Marlene was all right, whether Nola found steady work, whether he was eating, whether he was angry, whether I was safe inside his mood. New Wendy let silence do its job. He looked at my face, though there was no mark there now. "I handled that night badly," he said. Badly, such a small word for the sound of a hand across skin, for years of money pulled through guilt, for a loan packet built on a lie. But small words are sometimes the only ones people can carry. "Yes," I said, "you did. I was under pressure." "I know." His eyes lifted, hopeful for half a second, mistaking acknowledgement for absolution. I finished the sentence. "You made sure I was under it too." He looked down. From inside the hall, Teresa called my name. "Wendy, do you know where the dessert lid went?" I turned slightly, coming. Darren said, "Do you ever think about us?" I looked back at him. The honest answer surprised me, less than I thought I would. That hurt him. I saw it. I did not enjoy it. I also did not take it back. "I'm sorry," he said. I nodded. "I hope you mean that someday in a way that changes you." Then I walked back into the dining hall. The silver cloche sat at the center of the dessert table, covering a lemon cake. People admired it all evening. They lifted the lid, took slices, laughed, talked, donated money, carried plates back to round tables where no one sat at the head. I watched from the check-in desk and felt something settle in me that was not triumph exactly. Triumph is loud. This was quieter. It was the feeling of an object changing meaning because I had changed the life around it. The first thing that silver lid ever served was not chicken or rolls or cake. It served the county title record that proved my name had been there all along. It served the divorce petition I was finally brave enough to sign. It served the bank ledger that showed how much of myself I had been feeding people who called me useless with full mouths. It served the camera still that turned one private humiliation into a documented fact. It served the end of a marriage that had mistaken my patience for permission. For a long time, I thought revenge would feel like watching Darren suffer. It did not. The closest thing to revenge was waking up in a house where the coffee I made was mine. It was opening a bank statement and seeing no unexplained transfers. It was eating scrambled eggs at 9 at night because I wanted eggs, not because 3 adults had failed to feed themselves. It was turning off the porch light when I chose. It was buying a round table. It was giving Ruth a spare key. It was hearing my own footsteps in the hallway without listening for someone else's anger. People ask why I stayed so long. They do not always ask kindly. I used to feel ashamed of the answer. Now I tell the truth. I stayed because leaving is not one decision. It is 1,000 small permissions you have to give yourself after years of being trained to ask everyone else. Permission to document, permission to call a lawyer, permission to stop a transfer, permission to say no at a credit union table, permission to let people misunderstand you, permission to keep the house. Permission to sell the table, permission to become someone the old version of you might have been afraid to recognize. At 11:10 p.m., my husband told me a woman who owned nothing should know how to cook. He was wrong about what I owned. He was wrong about what I knew. And by the next morning, when the credit union closed his file and my attorney slid the county title record across the table, he finally learned what I had spent years learning quietly. A house is not owned by the loudest person in it. A family is not fed by the person everyone drains. And sometimes, when people keep demanding to be served, the only thing left to put on the table is the truth.